So good afternoon, everyone. It's me, Mark, from Eventerprise, and welcome to another edition of Eventer Talk. And today we're joined all the way from Costa Rica by Larissa Banting, who's the founder of Weddings Costa Rica, an award-winning destination wedding design company. It has been named by Destination Weddings and Honeymoons magazine as one of the top 30 wedding planners in the world. And Larissa, I think you've also received an award as one of the 25 most influential wedding planners in the world. So welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. It's lovely to have you here. Do you want to just tell our viewers, your history, your background in the events industry that led you all the way to Costa Rica?
First of all, thank you very much for having me here today, Mark. I actually come from a family of event producers. So my parents were, they started the second largest Canada Day festival in Canada. And they were working with all the ethnic groups in the city, and they would put this giant production on where all the groups would get together. They would have their tents in the park, and it was free admission. And they'd have their food and their dancing and their music and whatnot, and arts and crafts for sale. And it would run for 4 days, and they would be over 100,000 people at this event every year. So I literally grew up with that. And then my background is, and I was a professional dancer. That led me, after I retired, to work with different arts groups in Canada. And so I was in charge of their publicity and special events. And one of the events I worked on was the Northern Alberta International Children's Festival, which was 5 days and 50,000 kids. So lots of big events. And I was actually working on a project, a movie of the week, that was filming here in Costa Rica. And I met one of the actors and left everything behind. And here I am 16 years later. Okay, well, I was working for a travel agency at the time, and I had actually just married on the beach where we had met in Costa Rica. And I was like, here I am. I live here. My husband is Costa Rican, and I had so many hurdles and challenges trying to do my own wedding. And I thought, oh my gosh, these people who want to come here to get married, this is because, we're talking 16 years ago. We still had dial-up internet, most vendors here did not have email addresses or, cell phones or anything like that. So it was very much like word of mouth. So this opportunity came up with the agency I was working for. And I said, I can take on doing the weddings because, I've been doing events all my life. And so that's how it grew from there. And it just took off. And I ended up having to branch out on my own. And so we've been doing weddings now for 15 years. Well, it's a bit of a double-edged blade, to be honest, because back then, it was like looking for a needle in the haystack a lot of the times to find certain items. At that point, it was, which chair cover do you like? Because do you want the white or the beige tablecloth? Because we just didn't have the resources here. And now, because of, the internet and Pinterest and everything like that, we have a much deeper dialogue with our clients, because I'm here. I'm not in Los Angeles or New York or London where my clients are coming from. So we rely on, Skype. That has been a game changer, to be able to have these face-to-face conversations and get to know my clients. And then we can actually, work together, and I can send them, oh, what do you think about this? Or even taking a photo with my smartphone at the florist with a setup and be able to send it to them instantaneously. We didn't have any of that back then. I remember when I was working that first time here in Costa Rica, we were literally in the middle of the jungle on this beautiful beach, but dial-up internet. I had one of the first the digital phones. Yeah, it was one of the first digital phones that was available to the market. And I remember just trying to send one photo and just waiting for that little ball and hearing that noise, and then the system, the connection dropping, and be like, oh my gosh, I have to start over again. So that just the speed of everything has really helped. But on the other hand, Pinterest is great, but it also, I think, sets up a lot of people for very um, unrealistic expectations because, especially there's so many photographers and wedding planners who do all these styled shoots. And people are like, they look at that and they don't realize that, okay, they've been able to spend hours creating this look. When we're in a real wedding situation, a photographer doesn't have that luxury. Yes, we will have beautiful setups, but there's also that practicality. And sometimes I think people don't, they forget about that, or you start seeing
Larissa,
the same.
sorry to interrupt. Larissa, I totally get you because, like you said, a lot of your clients come from sophisticated world cities where the expectations are fired by what they've got available there, and often it's not available in the destination.
Being able to take my smartphone, like I had a wedding a year and 2 years ago, literally in the jungle. Like it was, the only way we could get there was by boat. Like there was no road. It was solar powered. Like we had to send all of the rentals, the tent, everything by barge because there was no other way to get there. We had to time it with the high tide. So, and they had these expectations. So I was there with my cell phone. I went down ahead of time to, check everything out. And I was like, just filming, saying, this is the reality. Like, this is what we're dealing with. So you're going to have to take some of those ideas and shunt them to the side because, I can't get a nice sculpture. It's not possible. Yeah.
Do you, for example, post some of these videos, these reality videos on your website as well to keep your clients informed?
Yeah, and definitely I do a lot of Facebook Lives on my Facebook page for Weddings Costa Rica. And, I'll do little snippets of, weddings that are happening at the moment or of the location that I'm at. I mean, we are a pretty, out of all the countries in Central America, we're definitely the most developed. And, I remember being at a bridal conference a couple of years ago, and I was showing one of my roommate at the time in the hotel, one of my weddings, and she had just won this award for like top wedding planner in Los Angeles. And she was like, oh my gosh, where did you get those chairs from? I'm like, San Jose. She's like, really? I'm like, yeah. She goes, I haven't seen chairs like that before. So, we've come a long way, baby, so to speak. We have amazing things that we can get here now for rentals and linens and whatnot. But there's still we're just, the reality is that some of the locations that people choose, they want to be off the beaten path, but that comes with a price, right? If you're off the beaten path, that means that, we're 6 hours from the nearest major city by car. So you have to kind of scale it back with expectations.
Larissa, you mentioned word of mouth earlier, and I want to get back to that. But before we started broadcasting, we were talking about reviews and how important it is because reviews these days have actually taken the place of the old word of mouth. Reviews, your cachet, your assets out in the digital space, that valuable feedback that you get from your clients.
I mean, that has been, honestly, Mark, it has been something it's been a struggle because, I know a lot of places in North America and also some places in Europe, they do have, up until recently, like with Eventerprise, websites or whatever where you can go and I'm in Los Angeles, so here's the reviews on the vendors from there. We really didn't have that here. So a lot of my clients were actually, I believe it or not, turning to TripAdvisor to write reviews because there just wasn't a platform that they could find where they could post something that other people could see. And it's funny because that's been something going on for years. And there's this one thread and people just keep adding to it. And for my business personally, because I do have really great reviews, and I've had so many people who, when they write in as a lead, I'm like, how did you find out about me? and it'll be like, oh, well, through a review on, TripAdvisor, or like, I've been doing my research and you by far have the most glowing reviews of any of the wedding planners in Costa Rica. And that's why I'm talking to you today. So it is, especially because being in a, quote, developing country, there's much more, people know a lot more about Costa Rica now, but, I remember, especially back in the day when I was starting, there was a lot of reticence, especially usually from the parents and the older folks, because all they remember hearing about, Central America was, the wars in Panama, Nicaragua, and El Salvador. And Costa Rica, we don't have an army. We haven't had an army since 1949, and we've been this little bastion of peace. We didn't have any of those issues. You can drink the water here. It's a safe country, but people, they just kind of brushstroke, oh, Central America bad, you all live in huts. So there was a lot of issues.
Believe me, Africa gets the same treatment. So I totally understand that one. So that's actually very very pertinent. As you know, Eventerprise, one of its central features is the fact that clients can leave reviews on your Eventerprise profile, and they are verified reviews. I think the stats say that your increase in leads, if you have reviews on an independent platform, is around about 40 to 50%.
Oh, definitely. Because again, like going back to this back in the day, I would get a lot of pushback from the parents, because at that point it was a lot of, because the market has changed drastically. But back when I started, a lot of the couples, their parents were contributing or paying for most of the wedding. So when you're asking someone to send, tens of thousands of dollars by wire transfer to some company in Costa Rica, they're like, okay, now, is this person for real? Like, how do we know this person really exists? So having those reviews, it takes that fear factor, that risk factor away, because it's like, yes, look, I really exist. I have a track record. I have happy clients, and these are real people. Because that's part of, a lot of these other review platforms out there, it could be anybody pretending that there's somebody else. So that's why when you have verified reviews, it is worth their weight in gold, because that's what's made a difference in my business for sure, is because when, everything looks good on the internet, and now everyone can do with beautiful professional photography. So it's like, okay, well, these two wedding planners, they look like they're about the same. What's the difference? And then they start reading the reviews, and because I have such a great cachet of reviews, that I inevitably get the gig.
Absolutely, and there's a I don't know if you'll agree, but there's another aspect to it, and it's benchmarking. Let's talk about the larger changes in the events industry or the wedding industry in Costa Rica. I'm sure that over the past 15, 16 years, competitors have sprouted up and so forth. So would you say that having reviews on a neutral platform is a good way to level the playing field? Because as we all know, a big multinational or a long-established company has probably got more in the kitty to spend on marketing, etc., to push their brand out there, which makes it a little bit difficult for newcomers or people who've worked really hard but don't necessarily spend as much on marketing to get the kudos that they deserve for their hard work. So I don't know if you'd agree, but I would say reviews play a very valuable benchmarking role there as well. Do you see it like that?
Well, I definitely think so, because I've seen, just in my experience here, like one business that has changed hands a few times. So, the person who started it, they moved away, sold it to somebody else, who then they moved away and sold it to somebody else. But, they're kind of like relying on their old marketing, but the last person that took it over didn't know what they were doing.
Right,
so
exactly.
That's where you need to have like the fresh reviews. Well, I mean, I always say to, I feel like I'm that last line of defense for my clients because we get one shot at making the event work. And I'm only as good and the event is only as good as all of the team members who are coming together to put it on. So having reliable creative partners is essential. And, I'm very picky about that because that's part of it. Like that, like especially in Latin America, because there's some people who just don't understand the timing, the importance of being on time. There's another cultural issue here that you run into where people they don't want to say no. They don't want to disappoint. So instead of like just being forthright and saying no, I can't do it, or this is beyond me, they'll just kind of like, oh, see. And then you're kind of like, well, is it yes or no? Because this is going to like, you're like the
happening
legs, and yours is the third leg. And if it's not standing up, then the whole thing's going to topple over. So that has been, it's been a struggle over the years. But I feel like because I do have a really good team that I've built up over the years, I'm reticent to take on someone I haven't worked with before because it's too risky. So if they do have the reviews and they do have that social proof, then I'm more willing to say, okay, let me give you a try. Well, I have some videographers and photographers. I mean, for us, it's a little bit trickier about bringing things into the country because of the import taxes and whatnot. So it's mostly like other providers. Like I do have someone I work with, with travel. Because we do offer, we handle all the travel within Costa Rica because that's been a big stumbling block for destination weddings. It's like, okay, I'm planning a wedding, but now I have to worry about getting Aunt Sue from the airport to the hotel, or that my friend Jane is going to like her hotel room. So I started that part of my business just to deal with the wedding guests. So like my clients don't have to take that on. So I have other partners in various countries for the flights in particular, so I can send the guests to work with them because we can't handle the flights. So yeah, we definitely do have those types of partnerships.
So on the Eventerprise platform, the profiles have a feature on the profile where you can actually indicate your various industry partners. So let's say, for example, you do travel arrangements as well, and maybe you work with a particular airline. I'm not going to punt any particular one right now, but then you're able to indicate them. If they're also on the platform, you can indicate your preferred photographer that you work with, or your number one caterer, etc.
Well, I think it's important because I think, again, it's showing legitimacy, right? Because there's a lot of, people worry about, again, it's a double-edged blade where, yes, the internet has opened up this whole new world, but on the other side of it, there is that dark side where, anybody can put up a profile and say there's somebody. And so by having those networks, it shows that you really are who you say you are, that you really are doing what you're claiming that you are, and that you have legitimacy. You are working at a world-class level, and that's what people are looking for. Is the couples who are getting married now, they've grown up with the internet. They're very different than the Gen X generation like ourselves. So the millennials, and then the I'm not sure what they're calling them, the next generation that's coming up. They're so plugged in, and they research everything. Everything, and they also are very connected. Like they will not make a decision until they get a consensus amongst their peers who they trust. So it's a completely different way to work, and I think a lot of people who've been the old guard who've been in the event industry for many moons, some people aren't understanding how that has shifted. Like the old way of doing business isn't going to work now because it's a different world. First of all, it's getting my business name out there to the world, and because all of that for SEO and whatnot, that all helps with your rankings, and that is so important. The legitimacy of it. The legitimacy, because you're connecting with other pros and that you've worked with, and it's showing, yes, like this is a business that really exists and we've worked with them, and we're the more connections you have, the more it shows that you know what you're doing, you've been around for a while, and you're good at what you do. And then the reviews, I always say a review is worth its weight in a brick of gold. That to me is a gold brick, because it's so valuable, because it's not me saying, oh yeah, look how great I am. It's a client who's experienced my work and my team's work and saying, yeah, we're very happy, especially with weddings that are such a high touch industry, and there's so much expectation. It's got to be the best day ever. So you really have to exceed those very high expectations. So when you get a referral, when someone is saying, yes, they met and exceeded my expectations, you can't get any better than that. And so that's why this is such a valuable platform.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Larissa. I don't know if you've got another event coming up today. It's early morning your side. So I don't want to take up too much of your time. Thank you very much. I think you have hit the nail on the head with a lot of what you mentioned today. The fact that how important it is to share that feedback from your clients, and to be transparent with your potential clients. The new I read an interesting article that millennials are now the decision makers in businesses. They've progressed, but they still demand that transparency in the people that they deal with, and hopefully that is what we can add to the party. Just for everyone out there, we're chatting to Larissa Banting, the founder of Weddings Costa Rica. She also has published a top 100 wedding blog called The Lazy Bride. We will pop the link into the comments a little bit later. If anyone has got any questions for either ourselves or for Larissa about her business, you're welcome to pop it in the comments section, and we'll get back to you ASAP. Larissa, is there anything else that you would like to mention before we sign off?
Well, I'll just thank you so much for having me today and being able to talk about, because I'm new media, and the how technology is changing the event industry is something that I'm very passionate about as an early adopter. And definitely I think because I was based in a different country than any of my clients, I had to adopt every new technology as soon as it came out in order to succeed. And I think that a successful business moving forward has to be on the cutting edge, and to embrace these new platforms, and to connect with other event pros. We're no longer in silos. Very quickly, I was just in Istanbul a couple of weeks ago for the ICWF wedding conference. It was the first time. This is an organization that's always had their conferences in India, and because that's the second largest wedding market in the world after the U.S. that we were talking about earlier. So this was our first foray into Europe, and there was a few of us who were invited from the Americas, and it was interesting because it is literally like different worlds. Those of us from the Americas were so focused on our little silo, and people who were from like India and Dubai and the Emirates, like they're very much in their little silos. And there's this whole like other world, like we had no idea. Like each other had no idea what was going on in our respective locations. So it's interesting. I love to see that these silos are being collapsed and Absolutely. Much more interchange horizontally with each other.
That is, I couldn't have come up with a better parting statement than that. I think you've made a very, very important point there. That there should be more information sharing, that there should be more interaction. It leads to better events, I would say, at the end of the day. So it's better for clients everywhere if there's more connections being made. And without now being too soppy, it is why our slogan is connecting the world of events. So what your parting comment slots really, really nicely in with what our stated vision and goal is. So thank you very much for that. It was absolutely lovely talking to you.
Likewise.
And we hope to actually have a follow-up with you at some stage when you're not too busy. But thank you very much, everyone who's been watching. Thank you so much for watching. And we will see you next week, same time and place. Cheerio.
Thanks.